Well, Lord March is a cat who loves racing and cars and has a racetrack and an airfield and everything else you can think of.
In his front yard?
Well, within miles of his place, yes.
Wow.
But the one happens at his house.
He probably lives in a castle, right?
No, it's a big house.
This is a big house.
Yeah, it's a big house.
Okay.
So his driveway, they basically, staging is the Marlboro liveried Lancia Stratus, which, if you guys know the European racing, that's a cool-ass rally car. Then behind it was the Silk Cut Jag, which is like a prototype Le Mans kind of car.
Le Mans car, yeah.
Then behind that was Jesse James' like off-road Baja truck.
Okay.
Then behind that, if I'm remembering right, Sunoco Ferrari BB512 LM.
Hey, welcome to Car Guy Confessions, brought to you by ARP. I'm Jeff Smith. This is my car buddy Cam Benty and car builder Steve Strope, and we're going to tell you some stories.
All right. Dive in. Welcome to another episode of Car Guy Confessions with Jeff Smith, my friend Cam Benty, and car builder extraordinaire Steve Strope.
Hola.
And we're going to tell you some stories. So, I mean, first of all, we have to acknowledge our cool banner that we just got, right?
Cool.
You know,
You bet.
which is very cool, and brought to us by our friends arp-bolts.com. We want to make sure and mention them because without them, we couldn't do this.
We are nothing.
Yes, yeah. And we're at our undisclosed location, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Says you.
So anything interesting happening?
There's all kinds of stuff going on.
You got some notes here.
We just, there's
And
a
it's got
situation.
highlighter
You were
on it.
telling
I
you were telling me about fires with electric cars.
Yes.
So let's talk about that one because
they do have fires.
They do.
That's right.
Oh boy.
And we talked about some of the technical reasons why they have fires.
Should we tell that story?
Sure.
Okay.
Why do they
Okay.
have
I will hide.
We're gonna dive
I
right
will
into
hide
tech.
the identities of the people involved, so we don't want to necessarily embarrass them.
We don't?
Major big three manufacturer. So
we
this
don't?
story it comes to me first person. So in the early days of development of the electric cars. In Detroit, when Christmas time comes, the whole town shuts down, right? Everybody goes home for 3 weeks. So at this particular manufacturer's plant, they had placed 3 battery packs for a typical electric vehicle, right? And they were separated by themselves on a concrete floor, just like here at our undisclosed location.
Batcave.
And Batcave, yes. So everybody goes to home for Christmas, comes back, and there are only 2 battery packs now, and a smoking hole in the middle of the floor. Because what happens, and this happens in any kind of electric car.
Spontaneously combust? Like the drummers from Spinal Tap?
Sort of. So what happens is, if this pack is not just like a bunch of 12-volt batteries. That's not what it is. It's more like AAA batteries, right? They're little individual, almost look. They look like AAA or AA batteries, and there's thousands of them.
Like cocktail weenies.
Yeah.
Right.
So what happens is if you've got a hot battery over here and a cold battery over here, the little electrons, they're just like an ant farm. They just go zip right over there, right?
An ant farm.
And what happens is if you don't control that electronically, because they break them up into packs.
Is that like lightning?
A little bit like it.
Cold and hot?
So is
cold
it
and hot.
passing through the concrete floor? How's it getting from one
No,
bundle
it's
to the other?
going, because all the batteries are connected. They're all connected.
All 3 are connected.
Yeah,
The 3
all
packs. I mean.
well, and then the thousands of little inserts. And if you don't control that with computers,
Wait.
they will just take off.
I got to get baseline. We've got 3 bundles.
There's
One
multiple.
bundle spontaneously combusts.
Well, actually, what happens is it might even be a battery between one bundle and another bundle, but they're all connected. They're all connected, kind of like your Christmas tree lights.
Oh, so they've got wires connecting the 3 packs?
Oh, absolutely, they're connected.
Okay, so they're not
and so,
3 individual.
No, because what they're doing is they're putting all these together because they got to run the voltage way up.
Right.
And the more voltage you've got,
So you got
the more
3 packs, but
pressure
they
you've
are
got to push
connected
the
by
amperage.
wiring.
Of sorts.
Okay.
I mean, I really don't. I'm not an electrical engineer,
I'm just
so I don't
trying to
know.
get
But
baseline
but
here,
the
so
point
that's what
is,
I'm trying
they can combust because what happens is you get a thermal runaway, and they will just take off on themselves. And so what you have to have is a vehicle with redundant electronic components that will say we have to control this, and you have to control the thermal, the temperature, because if
Did they
it
not
gets
know
too
that
hot,
when they left it alone?
I think they didn't realize it could happen. It was early on in the process, and it was an objective lesson. It's like we have to control these things, even if they're sitting there, not even in the vehicle.
Right.
So
Well,
there we go. There's the lead in.
I went through the BMW electric battery factory in South Carolina, and if you watch it go, what he's saying makes a lot of sense, because there are thousands of these little cells that are all interconnected, and they all feed off of each other, and it's a crazy dance that they make between all the different powered cells, basically. It always reminds me, there was a Saturday Night Live skit with Julia Louis-Dreyfus where they have the new Mercedes, and there's a situation where the entire car is driven by AA batteries.
AA batteries.
There's a button you push, and it lets go of all the batteries that are bad, and it's just like this giant mountain of batteries at the end. But anyway, so this all started with me looking at some of the research surrounding. I mean, we have had our questions about electric cars, and we've talked about that numerous times in the deal, but the orientation to understand how volatile an electric car fire is crazy. It started with this, and this is a little bit funny, but there was an electrical battery fire in India, and there were
the picture from here doesn't look a little bit funny.
It's a conflagration.
The funny part is that there's 30 new rickshaws were burned down. So
you mean
10 cars, 2 scooters, a motorcycle,
no
or left
pollution?
gutted. That's right. And the answer to why it happened is there could have been caused by a short circuit.
Yeah.
So there's that whole orientation.
It's a serious deal because
it is,
because the issue is that once the thing catches fire, you're not
hard
going
to
to put it out with a fire extinguisher.
Right.
I can't wait for an electric plane.
That's right. You can catch it.
That's going to be a great idea.
But the capper was that in order to put a fire out, if the fire department finds an electric car that is on fire, and they've happened, as we know,
yes,
what it takes to put one out is huge amounts of water. It talks about to put out an electrical fire requires up to 30,000 liters of and a flow rate of 1.1 liters per minute. So that's 300 gallons.
I think we figured it out somewhere close to
300 gallons
if our math is correct.
for water, because you have to extinguish it.
Which that's a fire hose.
Right.
That's a 1.5 inch fire hose.
They probably will have a fire hose, but that's
well, that won't need it.
They better have
like
a fire.
They're gonna
the
need
garden hose. The garden hose is not going to work.
No, the garden hose is not going to work. And then with the rest
of it was like, and then the stuff that flows off of the fire after putting the fire out,
you have to capture it.
Puts out. You can't let it flow into the drains. Because
all the nasty chemicals that are
because it's got hydrogen cyanide and carbon monoxide gases that are off-put by the electrical battery.
Oh, good.
So
now that sounds
there's some
like
nasty stuff going on.
Yeah.
But the whole side of electric vehicles, as we have said, with all the fervor over electric vehicles being the cure-all for everything, there are some scary things that go on.
Yeah.
There's always a yin and a yang, right?
I saw
right.
Somebody had sent to me not a electric car on fire, but an electric bicycle, like a beach cruiser, that had decided
to catch on
fire, and that was a gnarly little fire.
Oh, yeah,
and
probably
it kept
melted
going.
it.
Well, it started blowing the tires. It blew the tires up. It expanded them, and then the tires blew them, melted off. It was like, it's a little bicycle with a battery this big compared to the car, and it was like, no joke. I'm like, oh boy, that looks like fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
scary.
when I did the story on electric car performance for Hot Rod a year and a half or 2 years ago, whenever it was, and one of the cars that we talked about a little bit was a drift car, an electric drift car, and they wanted to run it a couple of years ago at Long Beach, and the Long Beach Fire Department said, no, because we don't know how to put it out. If that car catches fire, we don't know how to put it out. So until you come up with a procedure that we approve, we can't let you run this car because we don't know what's going to happen to it if it catches fire, which is a legitimate concern. So it's not that we're against it. It's just that there are other concerns that you have to take into account.
Apparently they were right, because they had learned now that not only does it take X amount of water to put it out, but you got to capture it.
You got to capture the
Can't
water
let
too.
it go. I mean,
because those are nasty
and
chemicals.
it can reignite even a day later. It's a situation where there's power that is,
there's still
floating
power
around.
there.
There's
Sure.
electrons kind of freely flowing about. But and I saw, I watched the Formula E one time, and they have the foam and other things that they use because of those cars crash, which is entirely possible because they're hitting some pretty good speeds these days. But Formula E, which is the electric Formula division, is it's impressive. It's the sound is not great, but
there isn't any.
It's
tire squealing.
It's a whine. There's an electric motor whine that you can hear, but it's different. You know? You know?
But it's interesting. I watched a couple of races, and,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. And their pit stop is they actually change cars.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's right. And you can also get additional power if the social media guys say, hey,
that was a weird one.
Yeah,
there are famous drivers, so he gets more horsepower.
I found that disgusting.
Stacking the deck. Stacking the deck.
That's racing.
Yeah.
No, that's actually a popularity contest.
Speaking of racing, we just, because this will kind of date where we're doing this, but, you know, Indy 500 was just a couple of weeks ago, and what an outstanding race. Did you watch it?
No.
Okay. It was a fantastic race.
Tell me about it.
It was wonderful.
That's a setup. I actually watched it, but I'm trying to give him some, something to do.
Some enthusiasm. But I've been watching IndyCar racing actually for the last couple of years, and it's really gotten good.
Right.
And, you know, and so like a lot of lead changes because the way they've designed the cars, and just like qualifying and then practice and then Fast Friday, I really didn't understand what that was. And then when I started watching the deal, it was like, well, we're going to give you now the boost levels that we hadn't given you before. And they were picking up like 12 miles an hour going into turn 3. So they're going into turn 3 at 243 miles an hour and not lifting. It's like, dude, it's like, whoa.
That's like Lucky Costa.
So really interesting stuff. And then qualifying and how intense that whole thing is. And then the lead changes and everything else. And then the heartbreaking, you know, when somebody exceeds pit entry speeds, and he was leading the race, and you know, so
got to follow the rules.
Great stuff. So if you don't follow it, you might want to check it out, because I think the first 5 races of the year they had 5 different winners. So it's very, very intense, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I'm excited in the fact that Iowa now has Netflix. So, you know,
yes, it does.
You're able to see,
you know, and there's 2 races
Yes.
at the Iowa Speedway. We're going to go. We're going to go watch the Indy cars run at Iowa Speedway in Newton, Iowa, in the end of July.
But you were able to see Need for Speed.
I was able to watch that, and so you turned me on to it.
That's
we were
right.
flicking the channels one day. I thought, well, let's just watch this. It was really interesting. It was really good, and I had no idea the intensity. The best part I liked about it was how excited they are at 10th spot. They got a point, and you had thought those guys had just won the race, you know, because they made a point, and it was like, wow, okay, you know, because I mean, at Indy you finish second, and the guy's like, I finished second, you know, and congratulations to the winner and everything else, but I finished second, and you know, but these guys are like, we made a point, you know, and it's like they're high-fiving, and it's like they had just won the Super Bowl. So, well,
I got a kick out of the fact that it showed a couple of drivers as total assholes.
Yeah.
You know, there were a bunch of guys that came off really bad. That guy, Marzipan, the Russian guy, I can't remember what his name is. That's not his name. But he's the
one where his dad owns the team.
And the whole bit. And then, of course, the Russian
billionaire out of Russia.
Yeah. And then the whole Russian thing is a little bit skewed these days, but to the good. But anyway, so there was that. But then some of the other guys, like Sonoda, didn't come off well. These guys came off as pretty petulant assholes, and it was interesting to see how that might affect them in terms of sponsorships and other things that go on, and maybe renewing of contracts, because, you know, there's a popularity contest a bit on here, what's going on.
Hey, we'd like to thank our sponsor, ARP-bolts.com. We got a fantastic little backdrop here. They make an outstanding series of bolts, almost anything you would need for engines, chassis, things like that. In fact, we were at lunch today, and a guy asked you about the bolt on the back of your shirt, and and I said, well, it's really about a head bolt. They neck the stem down of the bolt on a short, small block Chevy head bolt, so that the clamp load is even across 3 different head bolt lengths on a small block Chevy. And, you know, so that's the kind of technology that you get out of ARP. And we've all got stories on all that stuff.
For a translation of what he said, call ARPbolts.com.
but the message is that you can't get any better than that.
No, you cannot.
There you go.
Nope.
Excellent.
And then just check them out at ARP-bolts.com. We'd like to thank our friends at InTheGarageMedia.com. They have 3 fantastic magazines. They've got Classic Truck Performance, they have Modern Rotting, and my favorite, All Chevy Performance, with Nick, my buddy Nick, is the editor.
Biased.
So, correct. Yes, of course. Yes. But they're doing print media, which is, of course, our favorite. So
in color and everything.
In color and everything, and you can get your car on the cover of one of those books, which is a fun deal.
Great tech.
Great tech. By you know, not always written by me, but
not always written by me.
That's right.
Just pick it up and read it
at InTheGarageMedia.com, and they're our friends, and they will thank you.
There's a lot of interesting things going on with F1 that I've been watching it for a long time, and I was really happy when that series came out because it introduced it. Because America's always had a invisible wall to it.
Yeah, nobody cared. Yeah.
And now that everyone's watching it, which is, when you were doing something forever, and now everyone's like, "Oh man, you checked it out." I'm like, "Yeah, about time you got on the boat. Yeah, tell me all about it.
Where have you been for the last 10 years?
Tell me all about this F1 you discovered. Hey, forget.
Hey, this is pretty cool.
This is really neat."
Yeah, I have to admit that when F1 ran Long Beach, what was that, like 79 or 80, something like that?
I went, sure.
And I did too. I went with John Asher. Asher was going to go down and shoot some photos. He'd want to shoot with me. We'll get you a photographer badge. And I was like, yeah, this will be exciting. I mean, F1, wow, it's all so high-tech. So we're walking around the pits. And this was like A.J. Foyt at the Indy 500s as the mechanics. It was one of the Italian teams, and he's wailing on this car with his hammer. And I'm thinking, this is just like going to the bracket races. The boys are out there beating on their cars with a hammer. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not impressed. I mean, if you're going to massage it with a a nail file, I'm all over it because it's finesse. But no, this guy was wailing on this car with a hammer.
That's called desperation.
Yeah.
But I've been watching
that was my introduction
for a
to
very,
F1,
very long time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they do a real good job of showing all the sides and the ugly sides, which is great.
Yeah.
And you look at, there's 20 seats in the world. Right. There's 20 seats in the world, and
so 10 teams with two. Each team has two cars.
And they show the reality. 90% higher are all. I'll just spew it. Really rich kids who've been allowed to race. Now, are they gifted? Yeah. Are they talented?
Boy.
Fuck yeah. They are. There's no two ways around it.
Because you watch the.
But they've lived with a platinum spoon all their life.
Yes.
So they're used to that, and so you're
they're
gonna get.
Yeah, you're gonna get those egos.
You're gonna get
those
them.
egos. And I didn't really appreciate the intensity of between the two drivers per team. Because they both have the same car, and one guy is always winning. The other guy's, and it's like, well, I think I'm better than you are, but I can't show it to you. So the pressure's really on. And there was one scene where this guy's supposed to give away his position to his teammate.
That happened again this year.
Did it happen again this year?
Yes.
And it didn't happen, right? He didn't give it up. Well, some of them, sometimes they do, and you understand this is team orders, okay. And then there was one situation where he didn't.
Well, early in the season, the whole deal with Verstappen and with Perez. Perez is my favorite. I like Perez a lot.
And he just won Monaco, right?
He won Monaco a while. Yes, exactly. So, but the deal was that. I can't remember which race it was, but they made him give up his spot so that he could get the points, so that he could be chasing Leclerc, who was the Ferrari driver. So now it's, as opposed to Mercedes dominating everything, it's now Ferrari and Red Bull. It doesn't seem to be much of anything else going on. Yeah. Hamilton and the boys are second tier now. But what's interesting is that at Monaco, what happened was there was a bad pit stop for Leclerc. There was a thing that happened there, and so it ended up. You can't pass it, Monaco. You're
so
done.
Tight,
so it ended up being the complete reverse order of what was probably planned by the Red Bull guys. So Perez won, Seitz came in second, then Verstappen, and then Leclerc, and that was not the way it was orchestrated. But at that point, now you're going to have two people start, trading positions. Is Perez going to back off, which he did previously in the beginning of the year?
Yeah,
obviously not. But had it been Perez Verstappen, chances are he would have swapped it.
Yep.
And and you could see that Perez was not pleased about that previous one. So that dynamic is still going on, and that has happened forever. If you go back in the situation with Andretti, was it Peterson? Was it Peterson was his co-driver? I can't remember who was it was the Swedish guy. But he was a blocker for Andretti numerous times in numerous races back there. Was it 77, 78? Yeah. Somewhere in that range. Yeah. So that historical situation of teammates letting others get by or blocking for them, which is what Perez did in the final race of last year, where he held back Hamilton, not enough, but then shit happened. So but that was a crazy race. So it's actually been much more interesting. And you're right. In previous years, it's just been Hamilton. Hamilton has won everything. It's boring, whatever.
And
this year,
that's why a lot of people don't care, because it's like, well, why should I watch F1? Because it's the same people. Whoever qualifies is going to win the race. Well, now they've had a change of ownership.
It's all
been changed. And DRS, which I didn't even know what that was drag reduction system.
Yep.
And they changed the wing angles. And when the guy gets close, now he's got extra power to go around the guy. And it's all of a sudden it's a whole different ball game, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it makes it much more interesting. Lots of passing, lots of drama, lots of crashes.
do a good job on the show of not focusing just on who's winning or not, just everything going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And that's what you're paying attention to.
And the pressure, the enormous pressure that
the
they're
team
under.
bosses, the team managers, and the stuff they're under is pretty impressive.
And that's
a lot of money too.
Oh, it's just
that's
crazy
cubic money.
And now there are 3 U.S. Grand Prix.
So there's
Florida, Vegas, and Texas.
Yeah.
So
Coda.
Get your ticket, because when you go to SEMA this year, there'll probably be some Grand Prix folks hanging out there. So it should be.
By the way, I highly
similar.
recommend a couple of things. I'm going to go shameless plug.
Please.
Okay.
Be shameless.
Good
about
friend of this show, Bob Florine.
Yes.
ARP. He and I go down to COTA, the Circuit of the Americas, and we run with a group called Edge Addicts. They rent the track out.
Okay.
And they do a fantastic job. You get like at least 3 20-minute runs. You're exhausted by the end of the day. And
3 20-minute sessions.
And it is an absolutely stunning track.
Yeah.
What are you driving? What are you driving?
We keep it simple. Take one car. And Bob has a Z28.
That's an awesome car.
2013, the one with the 305s all the way around.
Okay.
I think it's earlier than that.
Stilo was the head of that car. So
we'll be in an upcoming episode.
We will beat the living crap out of that car all day long.
And it'll run
track.
all day long.
It's like more.
Give me more.
It does not care.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, but if you can ever make it to COTA or look up Edge Addicts and get in with that group and run on that track, because it is first class and they are fantastic. Great organization. A lot of fun all day. You will be exhausted. Don't care how good you are.
Yeah.
You'll be exhausted by the end of the day.
Don't realize how much it beats you up.
Yeah, and you will be driving, I'm going to say it slowly, on an F1 track. You will be on an F1 track, and it is as glorious. Yes, you. And it is as glorious as you think it is. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Go do it. Put it on your bucket list.
So we'd like to thank our sponsor, ARP and ARP-bolts.com. And, we all 3 build cars. We all work on this stuff. And
I tinker.
You tinker.
I tinker.
Yes, we all build.
Yeah, and you know what? It's kind of a really cool multiple purpose fastener for me, because there's all the science and all the technology, which is bottomless. Trust me. Unbelievable amount of research that they put into these things.
Sure, absolutely.
And on top of it, you get them out of the package, and they're absolutely beautiful, which I've joked before. It's like jewelry for your car. And when we're building when we're building a high-end car, there isn't anything else going on it. It's part of the criteria for me to have them lining the engine bay, not just on the engine, everywhere.
Yeah.
So you get all the strength, the durability, the reliability, and fantastic good looks.
Sure.
Kind of like Jeff here.
And without peer. Without peer.
And you know what?
Or pairs.
Without peer. There's nobody else that does what they do.
It is. So check them out at arp-bolts.com, and they can help you out. So we'd like to thank our friends at allamerican.com. They make some fantastic suspension pieces, coilover shock conversions. We put one on my Chevelle. Outstanding little piece of operation.
I just did a story on an El Camino.
On an El Camino, that's right.
And it's running a hot rod. Look at that.
Yeah. So, and then I think there's a little promo.
There's a promo code, CarGuy10. So when you're online, put in CarGuy10, and you will get 10% off.
Look at that.
Well, that's not bad.
And we don't expect you to send any part of that back to us.
No.
So I think we should really push that, right? You know?
Absolutely.
So you're on your own.
Some.
You're on your own.
Oh.
So thanks again to allamerican.com, and check them out. I just talked to a friend of mine, Dale Snook, who has a 62 409 car, but he's taken the 409 out of it and put a small block in it with a 410 gear and a 4-speed. And he was just telling me, I've been helping him a little bit with suspension stuff, trying to point him in the right direction and everything. And they just took it to Fontana and rented it at Fontana. And he said, I had the time of my life. He said it was a lot of fun. We should have him on the show, because there's all kinds of fun. Here's this big honking 62 Impala out there on the track with a bunch of Porsches and Ferraris and Corvettes and Camaros and stuff. And they're all like, your car is so cool.
Sure.
So we need to talk about that, because it's so different. It's this monster.
Different is good.
But actually, I think Dan didn't Gurney drive a 62 Impala in England back in the day against a salon racing or something like that? I think there's something about that.
This one.
Yeah.
We need to have a fact checker.
A fact checker. Yeah, they could just jump right up. Yeah.
Find that out.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Maybe we get a budget big enough. Or not.
Yeah.
That would be someone in the background with a phone right now.
Producers over there waving a cell phone.
Yeah,
We got this.
No, you're wrong.
So I got to watch. This is a while ago, not 62, but in 1981, I was at Hot Rod, and we did a suspension test with Herb Adams and Dick Goldstrand.
Yeah, that
with the
I remember
Camaros,
that.
right?
I remember that.
The capper.
It's
got the
Chavero. What was that?
Yes,
Herb Adams thing?
He did that.
Yeah, he did the Chavera. Yes.
That
yeah.
was with the
And
flares
before
and
that, the car that was my favorites of all time was the Gray Ghost, the 64
the
GTO,
Pontiac.
the Pontiac, the Tempest.
Correct.
And somebody's restored that car now because I was up at Monterey the year they brought it out, and it's just a very cool car. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, it was cool that day that we were doing the test up there. We had Goldstrand and had Herb Adams, and Goldstrand was a professional racer for a long time. I always loved watching old movies with Dick at his shop, and there'd be like a Corvette that'd roll over, like a C2 Corvette that roll over. He goes, "Anytime you see that, that's me." That's me. I did that.
Rolling over?
Rolling over. That's anytime there was a wreck C2, it was me. But anyway, so we're up there and we're driving these cars around, and I ended up buying this car. It was a 72 Z28. This is the one that had the Traco motor in it, and the Doug Nash and all the Goldstrand stuff on it. So that was cool. So we went up there and we had a baseline Camaro, and without announcement, Dan Gurney showed up, and Dan Gurney put it on those guys driving their prep cars with a, it was a warmed up Camaro. The factory one was not exactly factory, but at the same time, he gave him a run for the money. So it's always that routine when you think that you're here, then you go up against a pro and you realize how you are, or you race against somebody who thinks they're hot, and then you put it on them and you go like whoa,
you're not in the same league.
Gurney was like, you could just see if you put him in one of those other cars, he would have put half a track on him in a very short period of time.
Easily.
So you're looking at a guy who
knows
definitely
how to drive.
Is that tennis? What's he?
Oh, that's the car. That's the car. Okay,
There
very
it is.
cool.
Very
Yeah.
So he did drive an Impala. Right?
61 Impala. Okay, I was only off by 1 year, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, very
How about that for an old guy?
There you go.
He was road racing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen some of the Goodwood stuff?
That's like I've been over there.
You've been there, so let's talk
swallowing
about
an
that.
aircraft carrier.
Oh yeah, the best
Hard
one
to
is
board.
those little Ford Cortinas, and then there's a guy out there in a '64 Galaxy just sliding this thing to the corners, and it's just hysterical. And they are racing fender to fender where there's like inches apart, and they don't hit anybody, and it's just unbelievable how good these guys are. It's so much fun to watch. So if you ever get a chance to watch this stuff on YouTube or whatever, it's spectacular. It really is.
Yeah, Goodwood revival.
Yes. So didn't we talk about that a little bit one time?
Not on the show.
Not on the show. Should we talk about that?
Private conversation.
Yeah, I mean that's a bucket list deal because
I will tell you right now.
So explain what Goodwood is.
Well, there's
for
two different
those
Goodwood events, and I'm going to be really generic. One is at Lord March's house. Yeah,
a good coastal friend of yours?
Not mine.
No,
I think he's good buddy pals with Tony Thacker though. So everybody hit up Thacker.
Hey Tony.
So Lord March is a cat who loves racing and cars and has a racetrack and an airfield and everything else you can think of
in his front yard.
Oh, well, within miles of his place, yes.
Wow.
But the one happens at his house.
He probably lives in a castle, right?
No, it's a big house.
This is a big house.
Yeah, it's a big house.
Okay.
He's in the
So the one, his driveway, they basically
bigger than Gail Banks' house.
I'm gonna go. Basically at his house, it's a hill climb up his driveway.
Up his driveway.
It's up his driveway.
Yahoo!
So, and the other one is at the track. So I like the one in his house.
Is the track is
it's a track.
That's not Silverstone. This is a just separate track, correct?
Oh, it might be over. No,
Silverstone is a dedicated racetrack.
Yeah, Silverstone's a racetrack. I think March's thing. I haven't been to that, the racetrack. I've been over to Lord March's house where everything's coming up the hill climb, and it is.
And the hill climb's astonishing because
it's
of all the
mecca
different cars.
Because there's absolutely everything cool ever built as a race car of any genre or style is there.
And
okay, that's neat.
These guys get after it.
And every single person is full throttle up that driveway because everyone's trying to get the fastest time up.
Right.
And so you get to hear, smell, feel, sound each one of these cool things that you probably, like me, had only seen in photos.
Yeah.
I go to a ton of vintage stuff, and this stuff I'd never. I mean, when I got there, staging is the Marlboro liveried Lancia Stratus, which if you guys know the European racing, that's a cool-ass rally car. Then behind it was the Silk Cut Jag, which is like a prototype Le Mans kind of car.
Le Mans car, yeah.
And then behind that was Mustang, Dr. Jerry Trans Am Racer.
Titus? Jerry Titus cars?
One of Titus's cars.
Okay.
Wow.
Then behind that was Jesse James, like off-road Baja truck.
Okay.
Right.
Then behind that, if I'm remembering right, Sunoco Ferrari BB512 LM.
Wow.
So
And it's just
sort of the definition of
just
eclectic
that alone was like,
selection.
God damn it.
Yeah,
I mean,
this
it's
is cool.
just so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And newer F1 cars, prototype Le Mans, everything and anything are there, and they're all being driven in anger.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing that I like, there's a paddock down at the bottom, there's
Mm-hmm.
a paddock up at the top, and there's all these dudes, massive variant in ages.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this group of older guys that were there with like their older Nortons and
Yeah.
BSAs.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And they were just wide open and just like the biggest shit eating grin coming up the hill. And they were just so, you get to the paddock and just you're hearing ting, 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 everything cooling down.
Because everything's cooling down. You know, 'cause
And
they're getting after it.
When I was there, Lotus was the brand of
Right.
honor, and all the John Player special cars were lined up, and it's just amazing. I was taking detail photos of everything I could find,
Sure,
because I'm
yeah.
a hound for that.
Yeah.
And I'm taking shots of just this gorgeous like shifter linkage on this. It's probably a 62 or 63 Ferrari F1 car.
Okay.
And just the mechanical little pieces on it, just so
Yeah.
glorious and beautiful. So, and it was really, really amazing. And there's like, I don't know the official number, but there was hundreds, maybe into 1,000 different vendors selling books and just stuff that had to do with automotive performance in one
In
way
history.
or another, and sculptures and just
Really?
everything. It was so cool. If you could get over to Goodwood, it is by far the coolest automotive thing I've ever been at. Period.
Just to be clear, this is in England.
It's
This is
in England.
Yes.
Hands down, the coolest thing I've
Yeah.
ever experienced.
I've watched all the videos, and it's just a lot of fun. And,
It is.
And do they still bring in the aircraft too? The
Yeah,
World War
when I
II
was
stuff?
there, they had the Red Arrows, which is their version of the Blue Angels.
Blue Angels, okay.
They had those guys flying around.
But they had like P-51s, and they had
They had a
Super
whole bunch
Marine
of stuff.
Spitfires,
Mhm.
and
They
all
had
kinds of
a
neat
bunch
stuff.
of cool
So it was-
planes.
yeah,
It's really, really fantastic. And the world, like people from all over the world are there for 3
there.
days.
Yeah.
They build up near the top with the kind of like the finish line of the driveway. There's a bridge that goes over top of it. There's grandstands there. This is in the guy's front lawn.
in his front yard.
There's 2-story full glass, 2-story like Porsche dealership that they build, and it's there for 3 days.
constructed
and it
there
goes.
for 3 days, and
Oh,
then
yeah,
they-
wine tasting on the ceiling, on the roof, and you wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
And you can get up there, and then there's a little place that you can stand and wait, and a tractor with like doing a hayride. Right, except the trailer doesn't have hay; it's got benches. You ride that up over the hill and go down. They've got a off-road rally track.
Wow.
And those guys are racing around. I mean, it's when you think it's beyond cool, and then it's like, oh, we can go over to the rally track and watch them. Right? Good Lord, it's just never-ending, super cool stuff. And because I'm into books and magazines and literature and posters, oh my God,
Yeah.
bottomless.
That's probably
I
it's
paid so
limitless.
much money to ship everything I bought back home. I must have bought $500 worth of friggin' paper.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
just stuff I'd never even seen before.
Yeah, I didn't even know existed.
Needed and buy it over here.
Right.
So it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And they had everything. They had plenty of American performance. They had everything performance from everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just incredible.
And that brings up a whole nother genre of type of racing that we don't talk about very much, was the hill climbs. And that's a lot of fun. I did one several years ago. In fact, 2 years in a row, we did Alana was there. We did the Silver State Classic, not the Silver State Classic, the hill climb up to, what is it? Virginia City Hill Climb. And that's when Spectra sponsored it. That was a lot of fun. And, because he invited us to come up, right? He says, bring your car, bring your Chevelle. So it's like, I've never done a hill climb before. So it's like, yeah, okay, it sounds good. And then I thought, what am I getting myself into?
It's paved, we're saying, right?
It's a paved road, yes.
Okay, good. That's a good start.
It's the 341 challenge, I think is what he called it. And
that.
because it's named that because it's Highway 341.
Right.
The original highway that went up to Virginia City has this kink in it. And they couldn't get the semi-tractor trailers up in to deliver stuff into the city. No. So that the state built a separate road up through called Highway 341, and they just kind of looped together. They split off at the bottom and connected at the top once you get into town. And that's the road that you race up into town. And your car has to be street legal because you have to drive back down on paved highways to do this. And so I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. And then I looked up some videos, and it was shocking because you watch an in-car video of this thing, and you're racing up this hill, and you turn right, and there's nothing but blue sky.
Wow.
And there's no guardrails. And
always good.
And if you screw up, you go off the hill. And it's, and it looks like it's Pikes Peak. It's not quite that bad when you actually go there, but if you go off, and if you go off on like this, you go off this way, you're going to tumble sideways, and it's going to be ugly. So it was like, okay, high risk, no reward. So you just drive it.
It's no longer hill climb; it's hill drop.
Well, it's how gutsy do you want to be? Right. And but it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Broke my car. I did the Silver State with initially did it with Lingenfelder in an 86 Corvette. We went 206 miles an hour. I was right seat. That was a lot of fun. That's and I had one job. I had one job to sit in the right seat and start the
chrono.
The chrono, right? And I'd never been there before, never seen this before. And John talked me into going. I got the horse collar on, his cage, and and how fast are we going to go? And John goes, well, I'm shooting for 210, but we'll see how fast we can go. And we had previously, when I was the editor of Hot Rod, we had previously done a story with that same car where we took it to Transportation Research Center in Ohio. And because he calls me up one day and says, I got this idea to build a Corvette that will get 25 miles a gallon. This is a Tuneport 86 Corvette with a 350 in it. Now, he built a 383, then eventually a 410 inch.
406? No.
410 inch small block.
Right.
But this motor had a 383. This car had a 383 in it. Tuneport. He was guys. I can deliver. It was going to be this trifecta. So it was going to be 25 miles per gallon, a car that will go 12 80s, and we're going to go 180 miles an hour with it. And I thought, yeah, let's do a story on that. So we go to the drag strip. It runs. He said 1280s. I think we ran 1260s, something like that. And then it had a gear vendors in it. And then we had to do all this aerodynamic work to it overnight. So we didn't sleep at all. Then drove to the track, and then he jumps in it, and we put a bunch of sandbags in the nose because he wanted to keep the nose down. Well, what happened was it just lifted the back. So he goes by and goes 186 miles an hour in this thing, pulls in, jumps out. This car does not have a roll bar.
Perfect.
It's got a seat belt, and that's it, right?
Oh, no, that's safe.
He gets out of the car, and we went, yeah, this is bitching, because they had the TRC people down there in their timing set, and they go 186. Outstanding, really. Hands me the helmet, goes, here, you do this. Oh, I've never been this fast before. And he goes, nothing to it. Just come off the corner. Because TRC is, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 miles in diameter. I mean, it's a huge track. The straightaways, I think, are like 2.5 miles long. And
this is in Arizona?
No, this is in Ohio. Transportation Research Center in Ohio.
Yes,
so it was only just like a half hour or an hour and a half drive from his shop in Decatur, Indiana.
Yep.
So he gets out of the thing, hands me a helmet, and goes, here, you drive it. And I go, I've never been this fast before. I'm not qualified. He goes, nothing to it. Come off the corners at about 130 and just stand on it. Okay. So he belts me in the car and go, right? Yeah. So boom, go out there, come off the corner about 140, stand on it. And at somewhere around 180, the car starts to do this. It starts to dance.
Yeah.
So it's like I counter steer just a touch, right? And it would catch and then come back, and then it would come this way, and it'd counter steer the other way. Come back around, and I went 181. He goes, you went too slow. What'd you do wrong? What'd you do? I went, well, the tail was coming around. He goes, yeah, so? I went, well, the tail's coming around. Yeah, so? I said, I counter steer. He says, don't do that. I go, but the tail's coming around. He says, it'll stop. And I thought about it, and I went, oh, yeah, because it shows sideboard, and he says, the arrow, push it back. I said, who taught you to do that? He goes, just let it go. Until see where, because eventually it's got to come back. It's like, he goes, go out there and go again. No. No, thank you. I've got 180. That's fast enough. Okay. And then I had shot a pan blur with my camera of his car when he was going 186, and the back end was all but off the ground. You know, so literally there was probably like 50 pounds of weight on the back tires at 180 miles an hour at that car. You know, so then he took that car, put a full cage in it and everything, and we took it to Silver State, and we ran to Silver State with that, and we went 206, and it burned the transmission up.
Wow.
So yeah, and there's a section of Silver State where you come down this long, it's this like 40-mile long valley, and it's almost all downhill. And you come off this hill, and it's just flying. And we're on this 2-lane highway. It's bumpy, and the car's moving all over the place. And at the very end of that long straightaway, there's a hard left-hand turn. Then it goes through what they call the Narrows. That's where everybody crashes because you get speed blind. So we get to the end, and
speed
ESPN
blind. I hadn't heard that before.
Speed blind, where
you lose how fast you're going. Yes,
you know, so 100, 200 miles an hour, and you slow down to like 150, and it thinks like you can get out and walk because it just doesn't feel fast anymore.
Yeah.
So we get to the end, and the ESPN people come over, and they're interviewing us and stuff. And John's not a real big talker, you know, so he just looks at them and says, "Talk to him." So they're asking me questions, and I said, so at one point, we're going into that first corner, you know, and I thought you're not going, you know, you're going way too fast. I said I was thinking, and he reaches over and goes, "No, you said that to me." And I said, "I did?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "But I didn't listen to you." We went to the corner like 170, and you know, and because I thought we were going too slow. I thought we were going too slow. I said, "You can go through faster through here." I just thought that. Right. He said, "No, you said that." And he said, if we'd have done that, if we'd have gone faster, we would have crashed. Because he hit the apex and we went right out to the edge. And my side is, I'm looking at just dirt. And if you hit that edge and it rolls, you're going to roll. We'd still be rolling. You know, 30 years later, we'd still be rolling. Just amazing. And a couple people died there because the same thing. They just get speed blind and think, well, that's just it's a 90-degree corner, but it's a big radius. I can take that at 175 and woof.
Didn't Joe do that in Big Red?
Pettit did it in Big Red. Yes, the first year. We went back. We went there the second year, and there's some contention about that, about how fast they were really.
Yeah, because they sandbagged in the first.
Well, no, they gave him a time that was really hard to beat. In terms of what their average time was. And Lingenfeller always thought that was kind of a bogus time, but they did it to promote the event. And we did the story because Joe rode right seat.
Right.
And at the end, said, "Would you ever do this again?" He said, "Absolutely not."
Right.
And then when they redid it, just 10 years ago, whatever it was, and they invited Joe to come back, and they were doing this interview. There's a Bluetooth that whole series that they did. It was on TV. It was on some cable show
about Big Red.
About Big Red.
They did a whole show.
Yeah, the whole big show. There was like 8 sequences to it. And they did all these different things with the car. They took it to Bonneville. They took it to the Dry Lakes. They took it to. They did the Virginia City Hill Climb, which was really, and that's a very, very difficult deal because that's hard because if you think about it, that car is so badass that everybody says, "Oh well, he'll just beat everybody." It's like, but JR had never been there before, you know, and you don't just attack
you
that.
Get a local in a freaking Mini Cooper.
Because there's a guy up there that is a local, and he is a rocket because he's made 5,000 laps. He knows every corner because they always said you got to memorize the corner. And I remember driving up at about 2/3 of the way up, and I thought, okay, it was about halfway up, and I was in a canyon, and this is just an easy loop to the left, and then it's just an easy loop like this. Well, it turned out it was a decreasing radius thing that went like this.
Oh boy.
And I charged it, went, uh-oh. And it was one of those things, I wasn't going to go over a cliff. I was just going to go straight into the wall, which I didn't do because it was like I got off, it got on the brakes, and the car made the corner. But it was like I thought this was a wide radius corner, and it was a tight radius because I didn't memorize the track. You know, shame on me.
Mike Ryan used to do that in a semi.
Yeah, in a semi.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He did that in Mount Washington and Pikes Peak 17
Or like Pikes
times.
Peak. That's just when I watched Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
Man, and it's all paved now. But imagine doing it back when it was half paved and half dirt.
Jason shot a lot of that video footage.
Yeah.
Yes,
with
Jason
Mike's
Lewis.
truck.
Sure did.
Just astonishing.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Well, to get back to Big Red, the number that we wrote in CarCraft because we did a feature on that car like everybody else did.
Something like the average was like
199.5.
Yeah.
Average
and
for 117 miles.
You know, and there's some big sections in that course where you can't go more than 40 or 50 miles an hour.
Right.
And that was the contention. Was like, how did you average that speed? Because that car wouldn't do 240, but that's what you'd have to have for a top speed. Now maybe it did. I shouldn't say it didn't.
I don't know either.
But the whole point of that show was, which I didn't really realize until later, they came back to me and they said, well, the reason that we did all these crazy stuff with the Big Red was because of what you did with Hot Rod when you put Joe Pettit in the car. And that I think we've done that story before, haven't we? Because I got in all kinds of trouble for that. Because we didn't tell John and Diana what we were doing. I put Joe with Big Red, put him in the car, and Diana read the story and just came unglued.
They flipped
right?
out on all that stuff.
Why did he come unglued?
Because we put Joe in danger, and it was like, but it was his idea. It was his idea. So it's like, now I might have a different interpretation of that now had they crashed and Joe had gotten killed, but they didn't. Yes. And then the response that they got from the story that we did set them off to do all these other crazy things. So at one point they came back and said, we want to do this whole big series. We want to interview you. And it's like, why? And they said, well, this all started with you. Okay. So at one point, they said that we want to go back to the Silver State and do it again because I think we can go faster, and they didn't.
No, they didn't.
But we want to go back. Do you think Joe would do it? And I said, absolutely not. No, he won't do it because he's a family man now, and I know how much it scared him when he came. That's the first question I asked him when he got back. I said, would you want to do this again? No, he scared the hell out of me. That's right. And so then they said, well, we're going to ask him, and he said yes, and he did it. It was great. It was great. So good on you, Joe.
Peterson and the whole deal about, and this probably was a result of stuff that you were doing, and we did it too. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is the whole pushing away of all the events, the Car Crash Street Machine Nationals, Hot Rod National,
was a limited liability.
Was a limited liability because Gottlieb came in.
Our corporate attorney.
Came in and said, we're not doing that anymore.
We're not doing this.
And put Bruce Hubley in business.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that was how the Street Machine Nationals really became family events.
Sure, exactly. That whole deal came about because Gottlieb said, "We're not doing that anymore." There's
a great story about what happened later at the very end when the ownership of the company had changed several times, and that they owned Power Tour and Hubley ran it for them. So Family Events ran Power Tour for them, But the company owned that. But there was the Street Machine that was called the Summer Nationals up in St. Paul. Mm-hmm. And that was also run by Family Events.
Yeah, and then it broke off.
The company assumed that they owned that one too. Didn't do their homework and went to Bruce Hubley and said, "Well, we want 80% revenue of this thing." And he told them no. And they said, "Well, okay, we're just going to go do our own thing."
Yep.
And walked away from it, not knowing because they thought it was their event. And then somebody went, "Excuse me, you don't own this event." And it was like, "What?" Was
that one in St. Paul?
It was like,
there was one in St. Paul that was running at the same time that John was heading Carcraft.
Yes. So see, that's what they did.
He had me go up into a pros pick thing, and I'm going, isn't that Minnesota thing happening at the same time? He's like, oh God.
No, it's not. It's not us.
Right.
And so what happened was, then the ego from the company said, well, we'll just run our event on top of yours.
Right.
And I thought, don't do that. Separate it by 2 weeks, and you'll get all the people that are at St. Paul now come to your show. Oh no, egos say that we'll run this thing into the ground, and they went to Wisconsin, and it just went.
Yeah, tanked.
It tanked because they went head to head against a big show, so it was not very smart, But that's how you learn,
Well, this is the same company that gave away all their internet content. Remember that?
Well, yeah, and then eventually killed a bunch of magazines too.
Yes,
so
right.
if we show no love for the old Source Interlink, that's probably just because and of course you must consider the Source as disgruntled employee.
Sure. I'm a disgruntled reader. I miss all my
so we don't mind throwing them under the bus because we'll tell some stories that they would never admit to, but it's like, sorry, that's what happened.
Oh, and I
because imagine being Bruce Hubley going, "You're going to give me this event?" Okay. Yeah. I don't really understand why, but okay. And because they didn't know. They just didn't know. So it's like
and the one hand never knew what the other hand was doing.
Yeah. So
anyway.
but they're doing okay. They're doing okay, I guess.
Who knows?
I guess. And then they just merged with Warner Brothers, or Discovery bought Warner Brothers. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because my ex-wife works for them, so that's how I know.
Oh, there you go.
My soon-to-be ex-wife.
Soon-to-be ex-wife.
Yeah. So
not in Iowa.
Not in Iowa. No.
not in Iowa. I because I love bouncing around when we were talking about when Big Red was introduced.
Uh-huh.
And again, I'm a kid in Appalachian, New York, and I'm reading.
Oh, so you were still back there when Big Red came out?
Hell yeah.
Okay, all right. So that would have been 88,
yeah,
something like that?
I didn't come out to Cali till 95.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I was just, blown away by this kid driving basically this NASCAR in disguise.
Which it was, a big block Chevy with the motor set back into the front seat.
Yeah. As cool as it could be. It was a badass car.
Yeah, it still is.
But you talking about having it do different things reminds me of, and we'll see whose brain clicks, the Keith Black Triple Threat.
Yes,
Camaro.
I remember that.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That was a very cool car. That was supposed to be the
cool car.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the 3G car, I believe. It was supposed to do 1G launch on the drag strip, 1G lateral, and what would be the third one?
Off the cliff.
Yeah.
Braking.
Seemed like Dean
forget
Dodge
what it was.
Dean Dodge will, as soon as he watches this, will start throwing guts at me.
He's probably
breaking.
Right.
Yeah, 1G breaking. Yes,
it was really cool because
which is not easy.
We didn't just see the car; we saw how the car was modified.
Right. Yeah.
To do all this stuff, so that an IROC could actually do great amazing things.
Sure.
Which that thing did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Absolutely.
wonder what happened to that car. Anybody know where the triple threat car is?
Well, you know what? This is going back a little while now.
Funny thing you should mention.
Probably 15 years, but I was at Keith Black's. Keith was gone, and the son. What's Keith's son's name? Ken. Ken
Yes,
Black.
yes.
Ken Black. So I went over to Ken Black's, and the car was there.
Is it?
The car was there.
When was this?
It's got to be 12.
Yeah.
I was there with Jim.
I wonder
Schubert.
if it's
Jim
still
Schubert
there.
Okay.
But a lot of stuff was still there in the back room. It was pretty funny. He had a bunch of motors. He had a W7 Chrysler motors, which they were
NASCAR.
They were rally cars. They were I want to say like Iron Man.
IROC?
No, the Iron Man. What's his name? Ivan Stewart.
Ivan the Iron
So
Man
the rally,
Stewart?
the
Baja.
desert, the Baja racers. So there were a couple of W7 motors complete up on top of the rack, and all kinds of other motors and parts and pieces, and lots of raw casting. Connecting rods, all crazy stuff.
Well, with forgings,
and stacks and stacks of copper gaskets. And I told him, I said, you gotta like either melt these down or sell them to somebody. So it was like, stacks and stacks of this stuff. But what was the craziest thing that we found in there? I'm getting off on the side, but the car was very cool. It was still there. It was complete. It wasn't.
Because that's a historical car.
Right.
That's a very historical car.
But it was still there.
I'll call him up and say, you got to bring that thing out somewhere.
Yeah.
I want to
It's
take
going
a
back at least a decade, though.
Yeah.
It's at least a decade, so who knows what they got.
If it was there, it'd been there for a couple of decades.
It had, yes, exactly.
Right,
but it had been there a long time.
Cool car.
We found, it was funny, of course, we always dig around, and, Ken was very nice about, letting us look around, because I don't think he really cared. But anyway, so it was. But we found this bin, and it had all this Ford. It had Ford motor stuff in it.
Yeah.
And it had this. It had the block, had the rods, had the crank. It didn't have the heads, but I think it was. And it all the part numbers had X before them, so it was all experimental stuff. But
this is stuff all from Ford.
All from Ford, but it was like
from the 60s.
68 or 9.
So would this been like camera stuff?
I want to say it was like a tunnel port.
Tunnel
port. Because the heads were missing, but the rest of it was all there.
Wow.
And we put it up for sale. He put it up on eBay, and he sold it for like $2,000. And I thought that was cheap. I'm sure somebody would have put that thing together and made quite. But it all had.
What I thought would be a fun piece. Speaking of Ford experimental stuff, I always thought it'd be cool to the very first when Ford got involved with Colin Chapman on the early rear engine IndyCar stuff. They wanted to make that a stock block deal.
And talk to me about the Indy 4-cam motor that I already put in a Mustang.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the first developmental engine.
Tell me about the one that was sitting at Ed Pink Racing Engines, which is the prototype you're talking about.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it is now with Ford.
Because it wasn't. This was still a pushrod engine.
Yes, it was based.
So he has that first engine.
Had it. It's now back to Ford. But when I was down there and we were building the 4-cam motor for the Martini Mustang, they had it, and it was a Ford block, like a little 260. 260.
Yes, 260
with
base.
Whack job heads.
Right.
On it.
Very bizarre heads.
But it was based off of the Ford small block.
Yes.
The Ford 260. Now,
it was a stock block-based motor.
Proprietary everything.
Yes, and it became the dual overhead cam motor eventually.
It's
but the prototype motor.
Cam motor.
So he had the prototype motor there.
It was sitting there on the floor.
Wow. But is it still there now?
No, Ford has it now.
Ford has it now?
I believe they sold it to them.
Because I always thought it'd be fun to, because it was small block Ford based, if you could dig up a 260 block, would be to do a sort of a tribute motor as close as you could get to something like that, which would be kind of fun.
The heads wouldn't work, though. I mean, you couldn't take the Indy 4Cam heads and put
No. But this was still pushrod. That first engine was still pushrod, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was real funky looking.
Right. I think they were probably so you may not be able to duplicate everything. Yeah. How cool would that be, though? You know,
if I'm sure both of you have been to Pink's many times, and go down and meet the new people running it. Frank retired.
Okay.
And James, who's running it, is a great guy from England with tons and tons of knowledge on vintage motorsports over in England.
Yeah.
Nice.
Field trip.
They have, they've got. We got to go do an episode down there.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Because that building is good. That's been there forever. Is going to be demolished.
In Van Nuys, right? It's in Van Nuys.
Yeah, it's on Ray.
Well, it's nothing.
Raymer.
Street,
that building is going to be destroyed.
No.
Really?
And it's been there since day one. The state is taking the whole street, leveling everything, and putting in a train repair station.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So,
so
anyway.
because the little shops behind Pink's place
were Shirley Muldowney,
Harry Hibbler used to have his car back there. All those guys, because I used to go back there because that was just right down the street from where I used to live in the apartment.
He was so upset when Frank Hausowitz was running it, and I was down there I think we were doing the sock motor from the Fairlane. He had said a while ago, when they were redoing that building to have a little dyno in it and machine shop and stuff like that, in the first unit to the left, there's a breaker box that basically handles the power for the other ones. And there was a sign that somebody threw away that had Shirley Muldowney, Don Perdome.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, talk about history. Yeah, awesome. Like pieces from Gasoline Alley. I mean, that's what that's all about.
But going down there would be a real cool place to do a recording. But I'm telling you, what they've got sitting around in the back, there's like shelves of parts to just put together. Cosworth
what we want to do is just walk through there and go,
it's
tell
painful.
me about that.
Yeah.
Tell me about
that. No, just tell me about that rolling cart.
Yeah.
The parts sitting on that rolling cart.
Yeah. Because
they did when different times I've been down there, they had Duesenberg #1. They had the motor out of the Gulf Racing 917 Porsche.
Yeah.
They have the Ferrari 250 GTO motor, which is stupid,
unobtainium,
and everything in between. It's just the diversity.
Yeah, think about the history of that
engines
shop,
in there,
of what Pink has done over the years.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, just
crazy.
And the stuff laying around that they inside, like right here, where you could climb up on top of there.
There's a mezzanine.
Right. They went up there and found.
Historical stuff from the 60s,
top
probably.
fuel headers and just stuff laying around up there.
So you think about walking in there like at night after they close the shop down, and it would be like the ghosts come out at night, right? You know,
well, there's a lot of stuff.
You could write a story about that.
A lot of stuff has gone through those doors. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the history of that stuff.
Is this where Larry O'Frey Valley has?
No, that's a different place.
That's where Perdome was. Perdome was in that same row there.
Well, Perdome had his. As far as I know, he had one of the roll-up doors behind Pink's for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
As far as I know,
early on.
Him and Mongoose.
McEwen.
And Muldowney and I can't remember everybody on it, but how cool is
there's
just stupid.
A ton of history. So yeah, we should definitely
I can make that happen.
Good list.
If I can make that happen, can we make that happen?
Dude, that would be so much fun.
Yeah, I'll talk to James.
There's probably five sessions there we could do that would be so much
it'd be a neat
and we
thing.
need to do it quickly because it's going to go away, right?
In under a year
domain.
Now.
The city's going to eminent domain.
They've already.
Awesome.
Pink's already has a new building in the works James. Don't shoot me. I don't think this is top secret, but up in
Well, don't tell them.
Okay.
Get you in trouble. Then we won't be able to go.
They're excited about the new building, though.
That's right.
They're very excited. It's a nice new building with lots of glass and a lot of light.
Again, no script here, and it's like we're learning all kinds of cool
Yeah,
stuff. So
no, it's a cool deal, but the stuff sitting around just in the closet there is dumb.
Oh yeah. Okay, all right. We're getting the.
We had a lot of talent. We went on a lot of tangents.
We did.
A lot of tangents.
A lot of
it's
tangents,
great.
which is
And
good.
Tangential.
See, again, if you're not careful, you'll learn stuff.
Okay. So,
Sine wave.
if you like what you're seeing here, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Do
Man,
we have
got
a like
so many
button you
stories.
click or something like that?
Do we have something?
Do you click a like button?
Yeah, hope so. Yeah.
Down below.
Down below.
I always wanted to say that.
There, yeah. Okay. So we want to thank our friends at ARP. That's arp-bolts.com. Without this, we couldn't do this. Without their help, we couldn't do this. So this is fun. This was a good time.
Yeah, this is a good
if you
one.
like what you see here, click surprise us. Do all this.
Click something
Click the
that you
button.
approve it.
Click
Yes,
the button.
please.
Jesus.
Click the button.
And hopefully we'll just continue to keep doing this.
bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.